Illinois has among the highest tax rates in the country. When you look at everything from property taxes being number one, you've got gas taxes being number two, highest in the Midwest. And Illinois has a stagnant population, if not a decreasing population. How can you possibly keep that going? It's something that a lot of policymakers scratch their heads about, especially with the ongoing legacy debt that Illinois has. But with the Center Square, we've got an investigative team that's digging into these numbers across the spectrum of different types of spending. With a new series you'll be able to find on a regular occasion. Illinois, it's right there at the Center Square. Get to Fiscal Fallout. You'll see some of these stories. Joining us this morning with Illinois in Focus Daily is Jared Strong, one of the investigative reporters here with the Center Square. I'm Greg Bishop. Jared, thanks for taking time with us this morning. You guys have been doing a lot of digging into some fascinating documents and numbers, and well, quite frankly, it's rather wild what you guys are finding out with the Fiscal Fallout series. Break it down for us. Oh, Jared, I apologize. I do this all the time. You are now unmuted. It's 2025, no longer 2020, so you're off mute now.
It happens all the time, man. Good morning to you. Yeah, so we've been digging into a bunch of different things. Most recently, given the what looks to be impending budget cuts for next year, one of the latest things we dug into was government employee salaries and how they rank nationally. And we found that, Illinois is in the top 5 for compensation for state government workers. As a side note, it's also top 5 for pay for state lawmakers. But compare that to the cost of living for Illinois, which is more middling, depending on which analysis you're looking at. There are a couple that say Illinois ranks 19th or 24th for the highest level of cost of living. So there's some disparity there. The Illinois Policy Institute crunched the numbers on this. They found that government jobs that are unionized are outpacing private sector jobs that are comparable for salary. Their analysis found that, just in recent years, government salaries have increased 57% faster than private sector jobs. So again, against this backdrop, it's important because Governor Pritzker recently said, as you reported, that he'd be seeking 4% more or less across the board spending cuts to cope with an expected downturn in state revenues. There's also, as you've reported, a vast issue with the state's pension fund and how chronically underfunded it's been. So we're digging into a number of things.
Jared Strong joining us, and he's part of an investigative team with the Center Square, and they're looking at stuff all across the country. And here in Illinois, obviously, we've got a lot of issues. Jared, I've been reporting on the ground for 12 years here, and it's pretty wild to see just how much spending has gone on in the state, especially post-COVID during the Pritzker administration. And that's one of the first things you guys put together was looking at those numbers over the past 7 years and just the dramatic increase. And people can find that Fiscal Fallout story, which was published literally, as you mentioned, 24 hours or so before the governor announced, hey, we got to do 4% across the board to find some savings and some reserves. And he blamed it on the Trump administration, pointing at, the president looking to stop waste, fraud, and abuse with Medicaid and other safety net programs like SNAP, for instance, things that could cost Illinois hundreds of millions of dollars if it doesn't get its error rate down, right? So there's a ton of issues, and obviously you guys are going to continue to dig into the fiscal fallout of all of this. But you mentioned the state salary pay story that you guys got out Friday, and I encourage people to go to thecentersquare.com and read that and share that. But that just stacks on top of something else you guys looked into concerning diversity, equity, and inclusion, and just how many tax dollars in the state of Illinois are going to these types of programs. And you asked and answered, I think, an important question. I don't know if we have the full scope yet, but was there any positive net benefit to the taxpayer for how much money was spent on those programs?
Well, I mean, it is early, but based on the numbers we've seen so far, no, the relatively newly created Commission on Equity and Inclusion has actually sort of regressed from its overall goal. Now, this commission was created in 2022 as a result of complaints, largely, I believe, from business owners who are businesses that are majority owned by racial minorities, women, people with disabilities. The state has long had a goal for awarding those types of businesses a certain percentage of the overall dollars that are available through state contracts. For a long time, it was 20%. And under a different Illinois State Department, at least on paper, it was meeting its goals for a number of years. Well, based on these complaints that, this wasn't good enough, the state lawmakers increased that goal to 30% and created a new branch of the government, the Commission on Equity and Inclusion, to get us to get Illinois closer to that 30% or exceed it. Um, the issue that we found is that there's been a backslide in the percent or how close they are to that goal. Again, under previous department's oversight, they'd exceeded 20%, they'd exceeded 30%. Now we're sitting at about 4%. And the commission has not responded to multiple requests to comment about this situation. It appears from their data that they've identified more contracts that should be available to these businesses to be used in that calculation. So that's part of it. But we don't exactly know where they're at. We just know the numbers are down. And so one thing that we found as we've been reporting this is that this commission it's headed by a seven-member board. All of them are objectively highly paid. They all make more than $150,000 a year. So that's seven people. And underneath them, there's a staff of about 30, and it's growing, of people who are also, making on average about $100,000 a year or more. So it represents an overall small amount of the budget, but when you're looking at cutting 4% across the board, every penny counts. So we're looking at stuff like this, and we're going to continue to look into spending like this because, for instance, these commissioners, they make 150,000 more than $150,000 a year. They have monthly meetings that they're supposed to attend, for that are scheduled to go for 2 hours. But there's nothing in the statute, unlike for other appointed paid positions like this, there's nothing in the statute that prevents those people from having other jobs. There's nothing that says this should be your full-time focus. So we're going to see what those folks are doing, when they're not doing their work for the government and go from there.
Jared Strong with us here with Illinois in Focus Daily, an investigative reporter for the Center Square, delving into the fiscal fallout of Illinois tax dollars and where those are going. And as you talked about the DEI hiring and the contracting that they're trying to get out to certain businesses and the cost to the taxpayer being in the millions of dollars for this, plus the six-figure salaries going to these commissioners. Again, that just stacks up with what you're seeing in your latest reports about state employees salaries, and you list the highest paid state employees in this story. How much is that? And then how much are lawmakers making in the state of Illinois for what is really, you look at how many days they're in session, some may consider that a part-time job because, Jared, I think they work maybe 50 plus days in the state legislature actually being at the Capitol.
Yeah, I think it might be 70 days, something like that. But yeah, they just gave themselves raises and they're making, everyone, the base salary is just shy of $100,000 a year. And if you're in some, a leadership position that could easily swell by a couple tens of thousands of dollars. But yeah, we looked at state government salaries. If you want to look at overall who's making the most money, who's technically paid by the state, you're talking about college football coaches who are making millions of dollars a year. But as far as state government employees go, the top two, and actually three of the top 10, go to executives of the teachers' retirement system. They're in charge of managing the investments for the pension system for those folks. The executive director is making $518,000 a year. The deputy chief investment officer is making 398,000. And then beyond that are, physicians. They make up most of the rest of the top 20 salaries. Folks who work for, especially administrators, working for the Department of Corrections and Human Services. They're making upwards of $350,000. The top physicians are making more than $300,000. And then a heavy portion of the number of slots for the next like hundreds of highest paid slots go to judges. Supreme Court justices are making about 300 grand a year. And then there's appellate court judges that are close to that, and the district court judges are making $245,000. And I mean, and I'm not joking, there are hundreds of them. And then beyond that, we looked at what the top elected officials are making. Secretary of State, Attorney General, both making 212,000, Treasurer at 186,000. So we're looking where all of the pennies are spent in Illinois to as budget cuts are floated and as state lawmakers grapple with how to solve the state's tremendous pension crisis.
Jared Strong, he is a investigative reporter with the Center Square. I am so excited to see the work you guys are going to do, not just here in Illinois, but across the country with your team. And you've got a pretty solid leadership there to keep that train going with some incredible reports. What are you guys going to be looking at next?
Well, I mean, I'm going to keep digging on this Commission on Equity and Inclusion issue. And we're examining everything. I mean, this commission is a good example of that. Again, their portion of the overall budget's about, I think it's $7.3 million a year. That's not much when you compare it to the overall discretionary spending that state lawmakers have approved of about $55 billion, for this current budget year. But we're looking everywhere. So, we rely on the reporting, Greg, that you do every day. And, if folks out there have concerns about anything, reach out to us. Tips are always welcome.
I tell you what, Jared, I mean, the audience here obviously is with us each and every weekday morning, and I get plenty of tips coming in. So you're going to see a lot of forwards and a lot of other things coming your way. Greatly appreciate you taking the time with us this morning. We'll definitely be talking again soon because this is important stuff that the taxpayers of Illinois need to know about. So appreciate your work.
We must pull back all of these fences and all of these barriers to the American dream. Mr. Trump, tear down this fence now.
I'll be speaking to Governor J.B. Pritzker tomorrow. Do you have any messages or questions for him?
Well, I think he should beg for help because he's running a bad operation.
It's President Donald Trump and Illinois House Speaker President Donald Trump and current Illinois House Speaker Chris Welch yesterday talking about public safety and what's going on in Broadview in the city of Chicago with immigration enforcement. Good morning. I'm Greg Bishop. It's Illinois in Focus daily with you each and every weekday morning. A lot going on, including the ongoing back and forth between the Trump administration and the state of Illinois concerning the issue of immigration enforcement and the use of the National Guard to bring about more public safety. And in particular, all eyes have been on Broadview, Illinois, which is the only immigration and customs enforcement processing facility in the state. ICE doesn't have any detention space, from my understanding, so they have to, eventually move them either to Indiana to detain and get ready for deportation or somewhere else around the country. But Broadview, small community, 8,000 people, they've seen protests, and the protests got to a point several weeks ago where they put up a fence around the Broadview ICE facility, and that was to keep protesters from getting too close to the facility. Broadview sued, saying that the fence wasn't within regulation, and they have a judge order calling the fence to be taken down. I don't think that fence has been taken down. But regardless, you still had 15 arrests over the weekend. After the prior weekends, there were multiple arrests and clashes with protesters getting out of hand and clashing with law enforcement. But regardless of that, and regardless of the Broadview mayor already putting in an executive order limiting protest times, the Broadview mayor put in another executive order yesterday limiting where protesters can be, saying they've caused chaos. Even though the Broadview mayor supports the protesters' perspective. So setting all that up here, you've got a conversation that is back and forth between Democrats and Republicans about public safety, starting with Illinois House Speaker Chris Welch. He is in Broadview. It's his district, he said, and he made a... He made a comparison to the Berlin Wall and former President Ronald Reagan telling Mikhail Gorbachev to tear down the wall. And he used that to compare it to the fence in Broadview, protecting the Immigration Customs Enforcement facility in that village.
And an American president actually ordered an iron fence to be erected in American city. Just as the Berlin Wall did in 1961, this fence stands as a symbol of division. This fence is a symbol of dividing families. This fence is a symbol of dividing communities. This fence is a symbol of dividing Americans. And this fence is a symbol of denying American constitutional rights. This fence is also a distraction. Let's be clear. This fence is a distraction and a reinforcement of the havoc Trump has wreaked on our nation. What is he distracting us from? Some real basic verifiable facts. Black women have lost jobs at a higher rate than any demographic. Our community, this very community, is being stripped of DEI programming that supports our youth, that protects our youth, that's driving down violence. And folks are returning their animals. They're returning their animals to shelters because they can't afford to care for them.
You know, some people hearing that yesterday in the comments of the video said it's not Trump that's caused people to have economic hardship in Illinois. It's the Democrat policies of more taxation, highest property taxes in the country, highest gas taxes in the region, second highest in the country. The workers' comp costs for businesses, the stagnant population, a whole host of other things. Those weren't Trump's fault. Some are pointing that it's the Democrats' policies over several years that have led to this. But back to Speaker Welch.
We must pull back all of these fences and all of these barriers to the American dream. Mr. Trump, tear down this fence now. Tear it down. Tear down this symbol of division. Tear down this symbol of destruction. Tear it down and tear it down now.
So again, Speaker Welch there. You had other state legislators, and we'll hear from the Broadview mayor here in a moment. But I connected with Republican State Representative John Cabello yesterday, and he reacted to Welch's comments about the wall.
Well, I don't think the President of the United States is going to listen to the Speaker of the House. The wall or the fence is probably going to stay just right where it is. There may be a judge's order saying that to take it down, but I think that would be a state judge, and I don't believe that the federal government's going to listen to a state judge either. So, I mean, maybe people just need to remember history. So Barack Obama, Bill Clinton have deported more illegal aliens than Donald Trump. So why is it such an issue now that we're getting the worst of the worst to go back to the countries that they came from? We obviously want immigrants. We want them here legally, though. There's channels and ways of doing that. It makes no sense to me that we're having these types of protests. If you want to protest, please do, but make sure that it's peaceful. What we're seeing in Broadview is not peaceful. What we're seeing in Broadview, I sure hope they arrest a lot more people, because you break the law, that's what should be happening. And, you know, this is actually, in my opinion, what they did today was just an overall distraction from watching and seeing Michael J. Madigan reporting to prison. Maybe we should on the other side go and have some peaceful welcoming to Mr. Madigan in prison today. Maybe we could get some coverage like the Speaker of the House did.
We'll talk about former Illinois House Speaker Mike Madigan going to prison yesterday in the next segment. But interesting that Cabello interjected that idea when responding to the issue of, a welcoming city and sanctuary and such, and the protests Democrats have against Republicans, and the Trump administration in particular. But you've got another storyline about the corruption convictions of Speaker Madigan. Friday, Governor J.B. Pritzker was encouraging protests outside of the ICE facility.
I only have concern if peaceful protesters are somehow disrupted by people who are not being peaceful, or by ICE. And so that's why we've got Illinois State Police, we've got local police, we've got county sheriffs out there. We're trying to protect the protesters, the peaceful protesters. Anybody who isn't peaceful, is going to be arrested. But I encourage people to peacefully protest. I have been a peaceful protester many times in my life. I think this is a good thing. It's very American to do it. And so I encourage it. I think it's a good thing. And I think that the results of it will be, hopefully, that a lot of elected officials especially will hear them and act upon their voices.
Protests have been chaotic. I don't know if that's the metric of success, but even the Broadview mayor, Katrina Thompson, says that protesters, she agrees with their opposition to immigration enforcement and how the Trump administration's handling it, but she said that protesters are getting out of hand and causing chaos on the streets of Broadview, and that's problematic for her community.
There were 15 arrests, and 10 of those arrested were around the ages of my own daughter. And as both a mother and a mayor, I remain deeply upset by what occurred. Protecting peace and public safety. Let me be clear. Broadview did not choose to have the ICE facility in our community, but it's here, and so are our residents. There have been far too many protesters raising their fists instead of their voices, creating chaos at the expense of those who live here. Our residents do not have the privilege to retreat to quiet neighborhoods once the cameras are gone. They live here, they work here, and they deserve peace. Therefore, in consultation with the Illinois State Police, Cook County Sheriff, I have issued a new executive order. Effective immediately, the protests will only be permitted at designated safety zones located at the ICE facility on B Street. The previous safety zone on 25th Avenue between Lexington and Fillmore will no longer be used for demonstrations. This decision was made to protect lives. It's been only by God's grace that no one has been seriously injured or killed as protesters dart into traffic on that busy 4-lane street. The new measure protects both the safety of protesters and the serenity of Broadview residents.
So again, a new executive order in Broadview limiting where protesters can go. And John Cabello, who is in law enforcement himself, a Republican state representative from Chesney Park, says that it's interesting that you've got Thompson making these comments.
Well, is this the same mayor that at first said she'd welcome the protesters and now she doesn't? I mean, she's a disaster. She just needs to stick to dealing with her city. She obviously can't handle what's going on there. The state can't handle what's going on there. Let the feds do what they need to do. They will do it the way they need to. And, it's kind of like this, in Springfield, the Democrats don't ever ask us Republicans what's going on. It's going to be that way with the federal government. They're not going to ask what the state wants in any way, shape, or form. Governor Pritzker should have been big enough to call the president when he was telling him that this was going to happen. But JB just did not want to do it. And here we are. Cooler heads should have prevailed a long time ago. Now it's just a war of words that make no sense to at least 80% of the people. This is an 80-20 issue, and 80% of the people are against what the Broadview mayor with the Speaker of the House and what the governor is saying.
Also chatted with Republican State Representative Patrick Windhorst yesterday by phone, and he's the House floor leader for Republicans, and asked him about Welch's demonstration outside of Broadview.
I think when we look at what occurred or what was said in the press conference today, and the mayor of Broadview saying that she was going to even further limit the free speech zone that had been established, shows that the protests have exceeded what's protected by the First Amendment and have turned into unruly protests that are not protected by law. The fact that they're in the streets interfering with law enforcement, so much that there have been arrests made by or enforcement done by state law enforcement agencies, shows that the protests have gone beyond what is lawfully permitted. And if the other side, the Democratic side, is going to say we need to respect the law, the rule of law, that applies to all of the law, not just the law, part of the law they like or they want to see enforced. It applies to all the law. And we need to make sure that we do respect the rule of law in its totality.
So again, Patrick Windhorst talking about the rule of law and how it's obvious the protesters have gone beyond what's allowed in the First Amendment if the Broadview Village has to implement free speech zones. President Donald Trump speaking late yesterday. I was making dinner, and it's like 8 o'clock or something. Just need a little snack before bed, and I flip over to YouTube and see the president's talking on Air Force One, and right as I flip it on live, he's talking about the Insurrection Act. He's talking about the ongoing court battle between the state of Illinois and the Trump administration concerning the use of the National Guard, and even had a message for Governor J.B. Pritzker. But he said that he wants governors across the United States to be strong.
I want them to be stronger and tougher and not allow us to have record-breaking crime in Chicago and different places. I want them to admit they have crime. So there were 4,000 shootings in Chicago. Murders over a fairly short period of time.
And the president went on to say it was like a year and a half or something. It's if you take like 6 or 7 years and smash them together, you'll get 4,000. Because I mean, there were years where Chicago had 720 plus homicides, and several years in a row they had that. So you could see how that can quickly add up. But he was asked about the courts are stifling his efforts to use the Guard for public safety in places like Portland and in Illinois, where federal district judge Thursday blocked the Trump administration from moving forward with the plans to deploy 500 National Guardsmen to Illinois.
I could use it. If I wanted to, I could use it. Look, that's a very simple answer. I'm allowed to use the Insurrection Act. In fact, that was on Stephanopoulos today, his Sloppodopoulos show. They asked sloppy Chris Christie about the Insurrection Act. He said, well, if you're talking about the Insurrection Act, he's got the absolute right to use that. And he said a couple of things that were good. He said 50% of the presidents that served in office have used the Insurrection Act. And the Insurrection Act, according to all of them, said it can't even be challenged. I don't have to go there yet because I'm winning on appeal. You're right. We're losing with radical left judges, generally, radical left judges, and we're winning on appeal.
So he says they're winning on appeal, but on an emergency motion that the Trump administration filed to the 7th Circuit's U.S. Court of Appeals, that was denied. So they still got to deal with the case on the merits. But Trump was also asked about Pritzker. What message do you have for the Illinois governor?
I could use it. If I wanted to, I could use it. Look, that's a very simple.
I'll be speaking to Governor J.B. Pritzker tomorrow. Do you have any messages or questions for him?
Well, I think he should beg for help because he's running a bad operation. He's letting people be killed in his city because he doesn't want in Chicago. And I love Chicago. Chicago can be a great city again, and very quickly. I would have Chicago cleaned out, the criminals removed, we would remove them. In D.C. we took out 1,700 career criminals, hard-line criminals. That's why it's so good right now. D.C. setting records the other way. It's never been so safe. And the restaurants have never done better business. They're opening up new restaurants. They were closing restaurants, now they're opening new restaurants. I can do the same thing on a larger scale in Chicago. And Pritzker should ask me to do it. But when you mention insurrection, you were the one that mentioned, one of you mentioned Insurrection Act. I could do that. And many presidents have.
Do you have an update on
50%, Katie, 50% of the presidents have used the insurrection because they don't want to go through this stuff where somebody said there's no crime and 4,000 people got shot. You know, right?
Maybe you'll have to use it.
You don't have to convince, because she tends to be on the conservative side.
Do you have an update?
So again, that's President Donald Trump late yesterday talking about a variety of things, but having that message to Governor J.B. Pritzker that he should beg for Trump's help with public safety.
Because we won't sit back and let our democracy be taken from us. We're going to speak up while we can. History will judge those who are silent in this moment. And we're going to speak up today. We're going to stand up for our democracy.
You think it's tyranny? Seriously? We sat here for 2 years under tyranny from your tyrannical governor when he shut down this state, when he abused children, when he destroyed our economy. You sat here for 2 years under that tyranny. You didn't say a peep. You hid under your desk. So don't talk to me about tyranny or fighting tyranny.
Some of the action from the Illinois General Assembly yesterday as day 2's in the books. We got day 3 today, but the Senate's already canceled. And the House will be in session. What are they going to tackle? What was talked about yesterday? It's Illinois in Focus Daily, where you can wake up and get the latest of what's going on with Illinois state governments. When they are in session, we are on the ground with the Center Square. So get the headlines in your inbox at thecentersquare.com. But again, wake up with us for Illinois in Focus. So yesterday was day 2. The power went out in the middle of the day. It was pretty wild. Right in the middle of floor debate, all of a sudden, I'm in an office with a bunch of monitors, writing, listening, editing, helping get stuff where it needs to go for affiliates and subscribers, and all of a sudden all the technology goes down. Laptop screens frozen. Those computers plugged into the walls off. Power went out, so even some battery backups for the entire Capitol building did kick in, but it was kind of dicey for some people. The elevator still worked, but the lighting was... So that lasted for about 30 minutes, kind of threw a wrench into things for a bit, delayed some of the activity, but they're in full swing to a certain degree, right? And what we've seen so far this week is conversations and caucus meetings, and we don't get access to those caucus meetings. We can only get reports out about what's going on, but Democrats are, it's speculated, are haggling about the transit cliff and what kind of tax increase there should be. There's also the energy omnibus bill to prop up battery storage and wind and solar more, but that could add on costs, so people are apprehensive about joining onto that. So the Democrats have been caucusing a lot this week, and while the Illinois Senate has recessed until the end of the month for the final 3 days of fall veto session, the Illinois House is in session today, so we'll see what they have to say on the House floor, and we'll bring you that here with Illinois in Focus Friday morning. So be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you can wake up with us. But they started the day yesterday with a hearing about the regional transit authority's fiscal cliff. Now, this is the issue where they were trying to pass in the spring session a $1.50 delivery tax on retail delivery. So if you got a pizza, it would have a $1.50 on it. If you bought a motorcycle from Amazon, it would have a $1.50 charge on it. So it didn't matter how much the issue or the retail delivery was coming to you, it would have added a $1.50 tax on it. And downstate politicians were like, no, we don't want to tax our people anymore, to bail out regional transit authority, mass transit, and mass transit was saying they had a $770 million fiscal cliff by the end of this year, and they were raving that issue up during spring session. But now the fiscal cliff has diminished. Here's just some of the back and forth during this House hearing about the fiscal cliff issue.
Let me start by the 3-year projections on the fiscal cliff. 230 million, 834, 937. Are those numbers just shoring up and making the system healthy, or do they include any expansion, or are we just going to get it healthy and then we'll worry about expansion later?
Unfortunately, this is the floor, certainly not the ceiling. This is baseline to maintain existing services that we have. This is not the scenario that anybody wants to be talking about, but it is the floor.
So they've modified the fiscal cliff, and a lot of that was COVID dollars that are expiring. Or have expired, and by the end of the year, they're going to have that tens of millions and hundreds of millions of dollars. But you have State Representative Cam Buckner talking about the priorities of mass transit, and especially when they had a recent ad that they funded with $500,000 to urge the public to get legislators to give mass transit more money.
I'll just echo the sentiments of my colleague and counterpart, Leader Delgado. I think a lot of what you're hearing from my colleagues here is that there's an extreme and unfortunate deficit of trust, right? And that has to be rebuilt. In fact, I would posit to you that the trust cliff is just as steep and just as abrupt as the fiscal one. And so no matter what happens as we attempt to move this engagement forward, I would hope that we can have those honest conversations.
Buckner went on to talk about just the overall issue of mass transit and where we go from here.
I'll just say I think it's, and I've been very clear on the record about this publicly, and I'll continue to say it here today. The best PR campaign for RTA and any other service agencies is reliable transit. It's not spending $500,000 to remind the General Assembly that you're running out of money. It's not, some people use the word coerce or cajole. I felt that it was a bullying effort, and I don't think it worked. I think the right thing for you all to do would have to be to come to us and have a conversation and continue some of these, I think, more robust and effective back and forths that we've had over the last couple of months.
What happens with this issue, we don't know yet. The Senate, again, canceled today's session. The House is in session. Now, the Senate in May, they passed the transit omnibus bill with some regulations and reforms on mass transit with the tax increases included to pay for the fiscal cliff. The Senate passed that, so the ball's in the House's court. And what the House does next, we'll be watching. Of course, after today, they've got 3 full days scheduled. The last week of October, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of that week, just before Halloween. So what's going to happen with the transit issue, not too sure. Another issue they've been talking a lot about is energy, and we'll see what they do with that as well. But Illinois House Speaker Emanuel Chris Welch, he held a news conference outside the Speaker's office yesterday with members of the Democratic caucus, and he laid out what they were going to do Tuesday and why they were going to be standing up to the Trump administration.
But we're also going to talk about the state of our democracy, because people across Illinois are terrified that our democracy is slipping away. So we're going to go to the floor. We're going to start at noon, and we're going to present some resolutions today. We're going to condemn political violence in all forms, whether it comes from a gunman radicalized by the darkest corners of the internet or masked ICE agents. We're going to recognize that substantive due process is the only thing that separates a lawful detention from a kidnapping. And we're going to support the First Amendment rights that make all that possible. That's what we're going to do today, because we won't sit back and let our democracy be taken from us. We're going to speak up while we can. History will judge those who are silent in this moment. And we're going to speak up today. We're going to stand up for our democracy. And that's our plan for today.
Again, the speaker talking about what they were going to do Tuesday or Wednesday rather, and they laid out a bunch of different resolutions. But the speaker was asked about other issues like energy costs and how that's going to be addressed.
We're building consensus on a number of substantive issues that we hope to get done during this time that we are here. It's critical that we get things done to address important issues that are going on in this state. People want us to address affordability issues.
What about the property tax issues? What about the gas tax issues? Highest property taxes in the nation, second highest gas taxes in the nation, highest gas taxes in the Midwest, and you got workers' comp costs for businesses and other things. You've got House Republican State Representative Brad Halbrook saying that there's been no conversation about how to ease the ongoing burden of what the Democrats' General Assembly have put on taxpayers in the state of Illinois over a decade.
Yeah, so right on cue, the Democrats always go to it's always somebody else's fault. It's their bad policy that's driving the cost of living up, making all these things more difficult in the state of Illinois. They're doing nothing to address the high cost of living when it comes to property taxes, which we're now number one in the state, gasoline taxes that we're now number two in the state, some places number one. The energy costs are skyrocketing, doubling and tripling for consumers, homeowners, business people alike. The list goes on and on. Again, we've seen this movie before over and over again, and they do nothing to address the policy they've made that is driving these costs up.
Now, Welch talked a little bit about energy and what he hopes to get accomplished with an omnibus bill, and he says it's about addressing high costs.
Transit, keeping trains running on time, buses running on time, the ability for people to get to and from work is a very important issue that we're hard at work on. And we're hoping to get something done on that. Bringing down the costs of utility bills that are scary right now. We're trying our best to get something done on that.
And Halbrook says the best way to do something about it is to reverse course for Illinois policies.
Yeah, so we just have to reform the policy, right? I mean, on energy, we have to rethink the CEJA and the bills that are being circulated this summer and fall have to be rethought. We've got to have the baseload generation of coal and natural gas. All the while, the majority party wants to phase that out. That's what's driving costs up.
So that was all before going into session where they had debate about resolutions, not bills. Nothing passed yesterday to reform the state's energy policies. Nothing passed yesterday to address the transit fiscal cliff. Here is what passed yesterday. You did have a House bill pass both chambers about weight limit exemptions on highways. We'll have to delve into that bill. But you have others, including, some that were moved to committees and such, and a whole host of other things. But you have resolutions that as well were adopted. For instance, you've got resolutions they debated with State Representative Avalar saying that due process is something that they're focused on and criticizing the Trump administration's handling of immigration enforcement.
Literally what we're talking about is due process. We're talking about upholding the Constitution. We are talking about something that when I was a community organizer, I said time and time again, which is that everybody in the United States has constitutional rights. And this resolution affirms that. So I request.
So they were talking about due process, and it was in the middle of her presentation of her resolution where the power went out. And she had to come back and kind of reintroduce the measure. But, others were talking. We've heard the rhetoric. Trump is an authoritarian. We've heard the word tyrant being used in debate. Republican State Representative Blaine Wilhauer got up and saying, look in the mirror.
Governor J.B. Pritzker has deliberately sowed seeds of chaos. He's promoted resistance to law enforcement. He's even now threatening to prosecute members of law enforcement just for doing their job. That's ridiculous, because that's the same law enforcement agents who have put their lives at risk, taking murderers, rapists, pedophiles, sex traffickers. That's all documented. They've taken those people off the streets in Chicago, and his disgusting cheerleading has emboldened, it's absolutely emboldened these anti-American agitators that he's got on the streets of Chicago, and has put them into direct conflict with law enforcement. And our own speaker, he's not innocent either. He stood on this floor and ranted and raged like a lunatic, yelling, fascism, fascism. Do you think it's any mistake that was written on a bullet that killed Charlie Kirk? It's that you want to talk about violent political rhetoric, there it is. And then he goes on social media and says, fight, continue fighting. Who does he think that these people are fighting? You think it's tyranny? Seriously? We sat here for 2 years under tyranny from your tyrannical governor when he shut down this state, when he abused children, when he destroyed our economy. You sat here for 2 years under that tyranny. You didn't say a peep. You hid under your desk. So don't talk to me about tyranny or fighting tyranny. What you're fighting, when you're telling people to fight, your followers are fighting law enforcement.
Will Hauer obviously making that impassioned speech just in the general theme of what he's heard from Democrats for, well, the past 9 months. Here is State Representative Amy Briel talking about another resolution. And again, these are just resolutions kind of like, this is the official position of the Illinois House. Resolutions essentially critical of the Trump administration. And in this one, it focused on the Department of Health and Human Services Secretary, RFK Jr., who has certain perspectives about all of these issues of public health and vaccines and such. But the representative said that what she's seen is dangerous.
Trump and Kennedy's weaponization of misinformation and politicized science replace fact with fear, erode public trust, and ultimately tears down decades of work and progress for those of us with different disabilities.
And the conversation went from the issue of those on the autism spectrum and the comments that have been recently made by RFK Jr. or the Tylenol issue that happened several weeks ago with the Trump administration putting out that warning for pregnant mothers and such, and a whole host of other things that RFK Jr. and the Make America Healthy Again campaign that he's pushed for are doing. So Democrats in Illinois pushing back against that with this resolution. But Republican State Representative Bill Hauer, who's also a medical doctor, he pushed back on this resolution and said, again, when you talk about weaponizing misinformation about health, he says, look back at the COVID.
I lived through real weaponization of public health policy during COVID by the Biden administration, by the Pritzker administration. Lockdowns of businesses, small businesses, selected businesses, not every business. They centered on family businesses and small businesses in my district. Social distancing, there was no science around that, but we were forced to comply. Mask mandates in low-risk populations. Do you remember the chin straps our children wore for far too long? There was no science around that. But we were forced to comply, or our school boards were shut down. Vaccination mandates. My kids had vaccination passports. We had coerced compliance with vaccinations. You'd lose your job. Couldn't go to school. You couldn't travel. How many people were kicked out of our military? Thousands. Natural immunity was totally ignored. We forced churches to shut down. Police were outside churches. But somehow, magically, the protesters that were all out there in mass protests were fine, and they were protected from COVID. Oh, and the Biden administration tried to force vaccinations on 80 million people through OSHA. But the worst for me, the absolute worst, because I participated in it, is our hospitals and our nursing homes forced loved ones who were suffering and dying to die without their loved one, the person who loved them most, being beside them, to care for them and to touch them as they died. We can have an honest conversation about the politicization of health policy, but don't ignore the ultimate in weaponization of public health policy.
Congratulations, you made it to Friday. Good morning, I'm Greg Bishop, editor at Illinois for The Center Square, where you can get the headlines in your inbox each and every weekenday morning, thecentersquare.com. We come to you here for Illinois in Focus Daily each and every weekday. Not live this morning. I am actually pre-recording so I can have a little bit of a quieter morning after 3 days of session for the Illinois General Assembly. Fall veto session wrapped up their first week. We'll talk a little bit about that, but I want to encourage you in this time to subscribe to Illinois in Focus where you get podcasts, because there you'll be able to get the weekend edition where the Center Square's Jim Talamonte and I discuss not just a few stories, but a ton of stories from the past week. So it's a great encapsulation of what you'll be able to find at thecentersquare.com. But again, I want to remind you, get the podcast, because you also get the weekend edition. It's also here on YouTube, and on the weekends we get you a best of this program here. But some of the headlines you'll see at the Center Square: SNAP benefits are obviously a pretty important issue when it comes to Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program and the taxpayer subsidies for that program. Several things happening on that front, and you'll be able to get those headlines in your inbox. But one of them is the debate about how Trump administration policies that Congress passed are going to impact tax dollars here in Illinois. We could see $700+ million of extra Illinois taxpayer cost if the error rate for SNAP isn't corrected. So you can read about that. You can also, in Chicago, read about the new budgets that Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson has. He proposed it in front of the City Council Thursday, and it's a $16.6 billion budget, but it has a whole bunch of new taxes. While the teachers union in Chicago praised the budget, you've got business groups that are saying, oh, hold on a second, this is going to cost some empty storefronts, because it includes things like a head tax and social media tax and other big tech taxes. So they've got a $1 billion+ budget deficit they got to plug, and they've got to pass that budget by the end of the year, so you can read about that as well. But you can also read about this story: Hanover Park, Illinois, police officer arrested by immigration enforcement. And this is coming from the Department of Homeland Security, which details the arrest of this individual who was here past a tourist visa all the way from 2015. And if you look, you can also see where, the DHS Assistant Secretary said that Governor J.B. Pritzker doesn't just allow violent illegal aliens to terrorize Illinois communities, but he allows illegal aliens to work as sworn police officers. Pritzker enacted House Bill 3751 back in 2023. You can actually click through and see that story from back then of the governor sharing some of his thoughts, where he said that those who criticized it said, quote, "I'm tired of the right wing twisting these things. They put in the Facebook, they tell lies, they attack based upon those lies, they perpetuate lies so that there are people out there that think that we're just allowing anybody to become a police officer. That's not accurate," Pritzker said back in 2023, again, when he signed that measure, House Bill 3751. So you can read about all of this at thecentersquare.com. It's a free newswire service for you. So get the headlines. Next, and again, it's a Friday. We're going to wrap things up for the week and talk a little bit about veto session and a few other things, but we're going to focus here on this story of the governor and tax reports that Chicago Tribune released of the governor, partial taxes, and it showed that he won up $1.4 million gambling. So what's going on there? We'll hear all about it next here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Again, get the headlines, go to thecentersquare.com, sign up for that newsletter, and wake up with us here with Illinois in Focus Daily each and every weekday morning. I'm Greg Bishop for the Center Square.
I believe that's a net number. So yeah, but I mean, it was all, it all happened over one trip, and it was just, incredibly lucky. And as you know, most of the time, anybody who's been to a casino, you win, and all of anybody who's played cards in a casino knows that you often play for too long and lose whatever it is that you've won. I was fortunate enough to have to leave before that happened. So
I feel like the governor's got to be one of the luckiest people on the planet. Born into billions, comes into office after some of the more difficult times we've ever had, falls right into a bucket of COVID money and all sorts of other bailout money, and then heads off to Vegas for a weekend and makes $1.4 million. That sounds like the dream for not only myself but all of my constituents.
It's Governor J.B. Pritzker talking about how he won $1.4 million gambling, as was shown in a report from the Chicago Tribune that's got access to the governor's tax receipts. The governor's office and the campaign releasing those documents, partial documents, and obviously a lot of reaction. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop with you each and every weekday morning. Wake up with us for this program and get the headlines in your inbox at thecentersquare.com. So go to thecentersquare.com where you can read up on this, and you can read about $1.4 million that the governor made off of gambling. The Tribune reporting that the Pritzkers themselves paid $1.6 million in federal taxes and about $500,000 in state income taxes, with $10 million, over $10 million of income. That included $1.4 million from gambling. So the governor, he's a billionaire. He's got like, what, $3 billion as a heir of the Hyatt Hotel. And when the story came out late Wednesday, Thursday morning, Governor J.B. Pritzker held an unrelated news conference about the military and the use of the National Guard for public safety. He had several other members of the military, former generals and such there, criticizing the Trump administration. But afterwards, Jim Talamonte, the reporter for the Center Square, he asked the governor a question about this Tribune story and the taxes and the income he made off of certain gains and also the gambling winnings. Here is Governor Pritzker responding to Jim's question.
Another potential rival in a presidential primary could use the capital gains, the gambling winnings against you as sort of fodder in a campaign.
No. No. I think people know that when I got elected and have known for some time that, I've been very fortunate in my life, and if they want to use something like that in the campaign, I don't know. But I'm not, right now I'm focused on running for re-election as governor. That's the only thing I'm focused on politically. And, of course, most importantly in my job as governor today, protecting the people of Illinois from the unlawful acts of Stephen Miller and Donald Trump, Kristi Noem, Tom Homan, and Gregory Bovino. Paris.
The governor was then asked about the gambling revenue and if you could clarify where that money came from.
No. I obviously, and I've explained this, or at least we did in a statement, that I went on vacation with my wife, with some friends. I was incredibly lucky. You have to be to end up ahead, frankly, going to a casino anywhere. It was in Las Vegas, and I like to play cards, and so that I founded a charitable poker match here in Chicago called the Chicago Poker Challenge that has raised millions of dollars for the Holocaust Museum here, and particularly to stand up for civil rights. That's much of what the Holocaust Museum does, and so anyway. That's all I can say about it. I mean, I had fun doing it. I encourage people to come to the state of Illinois and gamble in our casinos here. We have some really lovely places to go. Yeah, Olivia and then Mitch.
And then another question coming in.
The number that was reported, can you say how much you have lost gambling?
I believe that's a net number. So yeah, but I mean, it was all it all happened over one trip, and again, it was just incredibly lucky. And as you know, most of the time, anybody who's been to a casino, you win, and all of anybody who's played cards in a casino knows that you often play for too long and lose whatever it is that you've won. I was fortunate enough to have to leave before that happened. So.
What was the final hand that made you?
Oh, I don't remember. Thank you.
What was the final hand was the final question that reporters got into the governor Thursday in reaction to that Tribune story. Several Republicans at the end of session, the House came in Thursday, they gavelled in, had some points of personal privilege, few words exchanged, they gavelled out. They didn't do any real business other than gaveling in and gaveling out, maybe some points of personal privilege. But some State House Republicans held a news conference to talk about the lack of action on affordability, the lack of action on property taxes, lack of action on energy costs, the lack of action on the transit cliff, and the lack of action on bipartisan statements against political violence and such. So you've got State Representative Jeff Kiker and State Representative C.D. Davidsmeyer at the tail end of that news conference. I'd asked for them to respond to this report about Governor Pritzker, not just, paying a bunch of taxes on $10 million of income, but $1.4 billion in gambling winnings.
Was it blackjack? Is that what we found out?
That's been confirmed now, blackjack.
It is blackjack.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think I would want to sit at his left next time he's playing if I understand how the cards are dealt. I have a problem with billionaires. I'm going to admit that. I don't know if I need my hand on the Bible or what. I don't trust billionaires. I don't trust them because they've never had to make payroll with $0 in the bank. I don't trust millionaires because of how they take care of their money like this. It was a $1.4 million win. Wasn't that approximately the number? Billionaires are out of touch with reality. And we see that with how the governor has treated our most needy and vulnerable. We look at Meals on Wheels. We look at adults with disabilities in the long-term care facilities. We look at how we have continued to fund excess programs, violence interruption grants, health care for illegal immigrants. He has no basis in reality for what a dollar means to the working people of the state of Illinois. My mom waited tables to keep a roof over my head after her and my father got divorced. I remember the mortgage company calling because at the time, $323 was just too much for us to be able to meet. There were more days than dollars. We had the power shut off when I was a kid. Until you've got a sense of reality of what a dollar means, you can't judge accurately what needs to happen with the tax regimen. And I think the perfect example of that, Leader Davidsmeyer talked about the increasing revenues that we've had over time since the governor took office, 40% additional. They have continued year in and year out along the way to continue to raise taxes and fees each and every year. There's an enhancement each and every year. How can that be? How? Yes, I understand things go up over time, but the disconnect with reality, the disconnect for not knowing what a zero balance means in a checking account, I don't trust billionaires. I don't trust this governor, don't trust the last governor. I've met a few billionaires in passing just because they happen to come down and lobby from time to time. I don't trust them at all because they've never had to be responsible. What they say goes in all of their experience up to this point in time. So $1.4 billion or $1 million in winnings, that is so absolutely disconnected. And I think if I do the math right in my head, that probably represents what a 35-year-old making $45,000 a year would make from 35 to 65 years old. And he wanted it sitting there. Tell me how that relates to the common man. CD?
And Representative C.D. Davidsmeyer.
I'm a little bit simpler. I feel like the governor's got to be one of the luckiest people on the planet. Born into billions, comes into office when after some of the more difficult times we've ever had, falls right into a bucket of COVID money and all sorts of other bailout money, and then heads off to Vegas for a weekend and makes $1.4 million. That sounds like the dream for not only myself but all of my constituents. And I'm not a jealous person. Congratulations on your winnings, but cannot relate to the average man.
Interesting. And how is this going to be used by Pritzker's political opposition moving forward? We all knew he was a billionaire, but the fact that he would gamble and be able to get $1.4 million, how much exactly did he put down? How much did he lose? What really were the circumstances of all that? And you heard the governor answer those questions and didn't even remember what the hand was. Surely some of you out there may have gone to a casino and won a lot of money and you remember exactly what the hand was. But interesting stuff. And we'll continue to keep on top of that and more. It's right here with Illinois in Focus. I'm Greg Bishop for the Center Square. All right, again, short show today. It's Friday, wrapping up the work week, getting out of here. Don't forget to get to thecentersquare.com, where you'll be able to read all about what's going on in Illinois. You've got a lot of headlines that we didn't even touch on all week long. Get the newsletter in your inbox, and also get the podcast where you get podcasts. You can click through Apple, Spotify, get the weekend edition each and every weekend, get the best of from the week here with YouTube, and of course, be back with us on Monday. We'll do a recap again of what happened with the fall veto session, but we'll also look at what's going on with public safety and immigration enforcement. So you've got the No Kings rallies that are going to be happening across the country this weekend, so we'll see what kinds of things come out of that. But again, got to gear up for that last week of fall veto session. They didn't do much this week when it comes to transit and any tax increase there, or about energy prices and possible subsidies for battery storage. So all of those things, we're going to be watching closely at what happens. And you can catch up with that with Illinois in Focus Weekend Edition. Jim Talamonte and I host that, so catch that. All right, we'll be back at it on Monday. See you then. Have a good weekend.
Take